All right, here we go. Elliott Forrest here from WQXR in New York City. Joining me now is the lovely, the talented mezzo soprano Susan Graham. Hey, Susan.
Hey, greetings from sunny SoCal.
Yeah, is that where you are? You're in California, right?
Yep, I live in Burbank, and so I decided to do this interview, outside so you can see what shelter at home in Southern California looks like.
Well, it looks lovely. How are you dealing with this whole crazy thing?
It's different every day. It really is, and I know that everybody has similar experiences. We talked about doing this interview last week, and I think I told you that I wasn't ready yet because probably if I started talking about it, I would start crying. And I'm sort of past that right now, but I feel like every day I wake up in some new surreal weird landscape. I'm used to the fact now that what our reality is, that we can't freely congregate and we can't go to places with other people. um, Clay's kids, he has two twins who are 13, and it's even tricky sharing households. You think about that, they're your kids, but it's that commingling of households thing that also is a tricky thing. They came over here yesterday and went swimming, and we all sort of hung out outside for a while, and they came in the house and it was fine. And I have my good friend Peggy Hickey, Broadway choreographer Peggy Hickey, is my Burbank BFF, and she lives down the street. So we go bike riding. We go on bike rides together from 6 feet apart. That's how you have to maintain the sanity in this crazy new surreality.
Generally speaking, your schedule is scheduled 2, 3, 4 years, maybe even more ahead. Where would you have been this week?
I would have been in Houston singing Herodias and Salome, my first one.
And
And
then I guess it's all on hold right now for you at this point, right?
well, that is not on hold. That is, the opera gigs are just canceled for now. I mean, for the foreseeable future. And we knew that was coming. And I was speaking to Perrin Leach, who runs the Houston Grand Opera, and he's an old friend. And I kept saying, "Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen?" And he said, "Sit tight, get on the airplane. We're working on a plan." And it turns out that they were trying to come up with alternate, ideas like live streaming a concert version or something if it came to that. But then the day before I was supposed to fly, which was, I guess, 3 weeks ago, they just pulled the plug, and they said it just can't work because our Salome was Lisa Lindstrom, who was trapped in Europe, and she lives in London, I believe, and so she had to quarantine at home for 14 days before she could even come over here. So the whole thing just sort of imploded. And even though I knew it was coming, it's still a gut punch because you're not used to having major events that you've invested your time and your heart and your money in preparing to just go down the tubes. And it feels like you've got somebody's come and cut off your arm in the middle of the night. And that was all pretty hard to take. I have concerts coming up I have one in May, one in June, one in July that there's no word on yet. I
Right.
don't know.
Things are just frozen for a while.
I mean, the most heartbreaking thing is that I can't go visit my mother. My mother is in an assisted living facility in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where my sister lives. And I had planned to go there on a rehearsal break from Houston and see her. And then, immediately her place went on lockdown.
Yeah, same
And it's
same with
really,
me and my dad.
yeah. And it's hard for them because what my mother was looking forward to when living in a place like that was, a sense of community and social. My mother's a social butterfly.
Yeah.
You may not know that, but she
Yeah, I
is.
knew that.
And, big surprise. And now she has to just stay in her room. They don't even let them go into the dining room, and it's crummy. And I feel so bad for the people. My stepfather is there too, so she at least she has a roommate. And it's hard for them to feel so isolated, in addition to you know maybe or maybe not being fully aware of the impact this is having on the world.
This virus has come close to you in a number of places. We just lost the writer Terrence McNally, who was I know, instrumental in your life. You were close to him for a lot of different reasons, right?
Yeah, he wrote Dead Man Walking with Jake Heggie. He wrote the libretto for Dead Man, and as you know, that piece changed my life. Um, my career sort of was before Dead Man and after Dead Man. I mean, in a life way too. Sister Helen Prejean became a close friend. Jake and Patrick Summers, who conducted it, Joe Mantello, who directed it, and Terrence, who wrote it. We were all, and Flicka, who played the role of the mother, which is the role that I now sing. You know, it was a life chapter. It wasn't a gig, you know. And Terrence shaped the language of it, and shaped these personalities so vividly, and like he did with every piece that he wrote. You know, he was extraordinary, and yeah, that hit home. That hit pretty close. And I had a friend that I know from Santa Fe, who died of the virus last week also. So, you know, and we have colleagues who are suffering with it, and it's non-discriminatory. It can get anybody. And those of us who travel a lot, I think, for obvious reasons, are more at risk.
Right.
Now, that being said, I haven't gotten on a plane in about a month. So I was sort of on the ground before it all blew up. But the last performance I did was a recital with Paul Groves and Malcolm Martineau in Napa for our dear friends who run the Napa concert series, and the Kongsgaards, who y'all may know by Kongsgaard wine, which is the best wine in the world. And very good friends, and they invited us to come do a concert. That's the last time I sang.
People may not always hear you use the word y'all, but you and I grew up, went to the same high school, and have known each other for a very long time.
Very long time.
Very long time. You went back to Texas Tech recently? Did they honor
I
you there?
teach there.
Uh,
I'm
Tell
on
me,
faculty at Texas Tech.
really?
Yeah,
Well,
but
not right this minute.
last spring, they gave me an honorary doctorate, and I was commencement speaker for graduation, which was daunting and huge and thrilling and fun and so 360, so full circle. And then this year I've been on faculty. I teach 2 weeks a semester. I'm sort of an adjunct faculty member, and I go into Lubbock for a week at the beginning and at the end of each semester, and we coach and we work, and I bring the outside world into their classroom. I bring the real world of opera into the lives of these young, wonderful, burgeoning artists.
So I have to ask you, going back to Texas Tech, how much does that feel like it was just like 2 minutes ago that you were a student there, and now you're teaching?
In a way, there's a sort of deja vu kind of element to it. But I also know that the things that have happened to me since I left there as a student, I could never in a million years have imagined. You know, I'm sure you know the feeling.
I do.
And so going back there, there's a little bit of young Susie still that comes into the play when I walk through those doors. And I will say that I gave a master class in Hemley Recital Hall, which is the same recital hall that I had to do, you know, my undergrad recitals in. And when I went to give a master class there last spring, I was terrified because I felt I had that same sense of walking into that hall and having those blue seats feel so scary, like they did when I was, 20 years old. I'm not 20 years old anymore. And there's no reason for me to have that feeling, but it was just this weird sort of regressive reaction. It was very funny. I eventually got over it.
When I directed the Matthew Shepard Oratorio, the
Mm-hmm.
first production meeting we had was in the building that I had my first class in at
Oh, come
UT
on.
Austin. So, decades after taking a class there in film and television, to be hired back so many years later to walk into the same building and
Did it
have
feel
that.
weird?
Oh, it was. I cried. I was moved by it. I was surprisingly to myself, was extremely moved by it. I just like couldn't, I remembered plaques on the wall, and it was very strange. That's all I can say,
I hear you.
and
I hear
rewarding
you.
at the same time.
Yeah. A little bit of that old angst comes back.
Yeah. Um, So, other than being on hold, give us an idea. You said riding bikes. What's how has your routine changed through all of this?
Well, the funny thing is for opera singers who work really hard, and then have a little bit of downtime in between gigs, and then work really hard. The only thing that's different is that I'm not preparing for a gig right now. I've always enjoyed my downtime. I love vacation time. I love time being at home. And I mean, Clay and I were talking about this yesterday. He goes, well, you were just saying a month ago that you're just wall to wall to wall and you wish you had more free time. And I guess the world took care of that for you. I said, oh, I guess so. Unfortunately, the world took care of it with, a lot of canceled paychecks too, which is not so lovely. But it could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse. And that's my big heartbreak is, as I wrote early on in this, my heart really breaks for artists and singers who are sort of just starting out, and they're just getting excited, and they're just getting their first gigs. Some of my young artists from the LA Opera Young Artist Program that I mentor and teach in are just starting to get gigs that are now being pulled out from under them, and I feel terrible for them because I was as excited as they were, for them to start their journey. And the financial stress and panic that younger artists must be experiencing is mortifying. I mean, colleagues of mine who were in Salome who were really relying on that gig to pay a lot of bills. And we all are, don't get me wrong, we all are. But I have a lot of compassion and sympathy for those who are really in dire straits. That's why these organizations set up like artistrelieftree.com and AGMA Relief are so important. And I can't go down to a hospital and don a mask and be of medical assistance to anybody, but I can donate money to these charities, these resources that are helping artists. And I encourage everybody, if you've got $5 to spare, or if you've got $500 to spare, there's always somebody who's in worse shape than you are.
Yeah.
At least in my case, I know that that's true. So I really urge everybody to support those donation sites as much as you can. I love what some of my colleagues are doing. Ryan McKinney is doing this series of wonderful collaborations with fellow artists, and he's got the technology down. I think it's Final Pro or some app like that where a pianist will send a track, and then he'll record himself, and then another artist will record himself singing, and you can mix them up to get. It's all over my head, but I
Yeah,
want to
Final
figure out how
Cut
to do it.
Pro, I think, is what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, right,
yeah,
exactly.
and I think it's awesome, and it just lifts everybody's spirits. And Ryan is doing all that for these, and he always lists these charities. So if you guys go to his YouTube, Ryan McKinney's YouTube channel, and you can hear all these, and you can see what he's doing. I want to do one with him too. We've got something maybe in the works. But I got to tell you, Elliott, in the first 10 days of this, I couldn't find my singing voice. I was so kind of panicked and distressed that I couldn't. And I've talked to other colleagues, singers, who feel this way too. I didn't have it in me. I'm starting to find it again. Just the other day, I sat down at the piano because I play the piano too, for myself and for fun. And I finally just pulled out a book of classical hits, and I started playing, some Beethoven sonatas and some Mozart and some Debussy, but it took me like 2 weeks to just sit down at the piano and start making music. It's a funny thing because we turn to music for our solace and for our expression, but a little bit of that for a while I couldn't even find. And I know I'm not alone in that. I mean, I
Yeah.
heard your interview with Josh, and even Josh Bell was even saying that it took him a while to get to that place. Excuse me.
Right. Well, it sounds like, first of all, you're well, and that's good. That's the best thing. And I think your heart, like so many, are reaching out to other people, trying to figure out how we can help. And I have a feeling the performing arts probably won't be exactly the same ever again going forward, even if it's about seating
Okay,
space
yeah.
and how we
Yeah.
greet one another. But something tells me that people will want that live experience even more when this all comes to a close.
I'm loving seeing the content that people are putting online. You know, sometimes it's right within their normal wheelhouse, and sometimes it isn't. And I think it's fantastic to see the variety and the imagination and the resourcefulness that artists are coming up with. It makes my heart happy, and God knows we all can use a smile.
Yeah. Lovely spending time with you. I hope to see you in person
My
very
dear,
soon.
I hope so too.
All right. Be well.
Thanks, you too.
Susan Graham, thanks so much.